Good evening, my friends. Today we're going to do something a little bit different. The structure of this episode isn't going to be quite so formal because a good friend of mine asked me to do a certain challenge with her. I believe it was called the 30-day garbage post or something like that, wherein you have to create and output a very large amount of content in 30 days. I don't remember if it was 60 or 90 or 100, but it's a lot. And in order to do that, you have to create a lot of things that are not perfect. And of course, nothing we create is really perfect. Everything we create is going to be flawed because we are here on Earth where everything is a little bit flawed and everything is constantly in the process of breaking down and disintegrating, and not just from the extreme weather phenomena that it is being subjected to. So today we're just going to look at what's kicking around over here on the good old interwebs. So we have our good pal Ben here, and let's take a look at the sun. Today is Tuesday, March 7th, 2023.
Good morning, folks. We've got looks at the sun and space weather, a record cyclone, some
This is a
nova
pretty
science, and a bit
gnarly
on the
grouping
South
over
Atlantic
here
anomaly as
to
well.
me.
We'll start with our star, and despite the number of sunspots we have on the disk, we have had a lesser outburst period the last day. Only tiny M-class flares, no bigger eruptions, and currently there are no coronal holes facing Earth. The solar wind and geomagnetic conditions are calming back, and we're seeing the
Doesn't look
ionosphere
so
and
calm to
atmosphere
me.
finally
This
quiet
I don't
after the solar storm conditions
this
last
looks
week. As we zoom
violent.
in here on the southern
This is
filaments,
some
which have also
violence up
thankfully
here.
remained stable, let's recall the intimate connection between solar flares, solar storms, and the tropical activity here on Earth. We've gone over it many times, and we just had Cyclone Freddy, seen here pounding Madagascar for the second time in a week after pulling a very unusual loop pattern, and it's just smashed the record for the longest traveling cyclone in recorded history. It's also the only known cyclone to have four separate rapid intensifications, and each one right after a flare event or the magnetic storms here on Earth. Deadly event in the South Indian Ocean.
So, really been a year for the record books, a lot of record setting, record breaking, and of course, Cyclone Freddy. In the United States, in the continental US, the weather reporting agencies tend to refer to these as quote unquote bomb cyclones. That is how they describe the rapid intensification. Ben does a good job of highlighting the cosmic connection with the sun and how these flaring events tend to energize the ionosphere and energize the atmosphere in such a way as to favor and be conducive to the rapid intensification of storms and heightened cyclonic activity. However, I would like to draw attention to the fact that HARP and or the atmospheric heaters that are being used and abused and deployed all over the earth are also more than capable, because anything that adds heat or energy to the atmosphere is going to strengthen and bolster the development of these storms. Let's check back in North Queensland again, Australia. Flooding cuts roads as some areas receive a foot of rain. It says the wet season deluge continues in far north Queensland, where landslides, really a lot of landslides happening around the world right now. Landslides and avalanches really becoming the norm this winter, have closed major roads with drivers stuck in floodwaters and a flood watch alert in place for hundreds of kilometers of river systems. Several major far north roads have been closed due to landslides and fallen trees. Interesting. So a lot of road closures. Let's go to Brazil. Hundreds displaced by floods in northern Paraná after 6 inches of rain in short period. So you can see a very flooded area in Bandeirantes. Um, Over 150 millimeters of rain in a short period. The volume and intensity of the rain caused rivers to break their banks, flooding wide areas of Bandeirantes. Around 250 homes were damaged and over 700 people were displaced. So again, people being displaced. Roads are impassable. Okay. Schools have been closed, limiting people's movement, damaging and attacking infrastructure, closing schools. Many of those displaced are being housed in local schools and other public buildings. Local authorities are providing food and other relief supplies. So we have these disaster management agencies conveniently there to help. What else have we got? 3 German skiers die in avalanche in British Columbia mountains. Of course, it's not surprising when you have this amount of snowpack. One of the most dangerous avalanche seasons of recent memory. Avalanche Black Crater, Oregon claims life of backcountry skier. This is interesting. Southern California are pleading for more help as some remain in an increasingly desperate situation after a massive snowstorm overwhelmed the area. Air 7 HD from our sister station, ABC 7 Los Angeles, flew over the Lake Gregory area of Crestline Friday afternoon and captured a large message written out in the snow that read, "Help us." Despite facing treacherous roads, aerial footage showed dozens of residents lined up at a food distribution outside a Crestline grocery store where the roof had collapsed earlier in the week. Here we have Thundersnow in Toronto. It hasn't even been a full week since the last snowstorm, but now another major system lashed the greater Toronto area on Friday night, bringing with it a fresh coating of snow that clearing crews continued to battle. But snow was not the only thing flashing throughout the sky. There was also Thundersnow. Let's
The
take a
wind
look.
is wicked. The snow has been building up throughout the evening and the conditions are worse. And we even witnessed a weather phenomenon.
Because of the types of tires or vehicles that they're driving. So, Thundersnow. That's Thundersnow. So that just is that's the sign of how significant this type of storm is.
Snow drifting rapidly, hitting Toronto streets, and booming thunder with flashes of lightning adding to the drama. The inclement weather leading to collisions across the city, with visibility and traction both limited.
Struck poles, gone up on streetcar barriers, turned sideways, you name it, we're hearing it. And it all has to boil down to speed.
The weather turning in just a few hours from people out with their pets to less than friendly conditions.
I really want the spring come soon.
Okay, well, YouTube has decided it doesn't want to load any more of the video, but I think we've gotten what we wanted. So Thundersnow is extremely rare and happens when there's just an enormous amount of energy in a storm. And so again, looking at the part of the solar cycle that we're in, the amount of plasma and charged particles being sent our way, both from the solar wind and from these CMEs and solar flares, coupled with the obvious use of atmospheric heaters and HARP technology in order to strengthen these storms. Certainly in Madagascar, you don't get a loop storm. You don't get a storm re-intensifying 4 times without outside influence. I mean, give me a break. Here we have a cluster of tornadoes and flooding in the southern US. This is from one of these storm systems, but of course in the south, a lot of this takes the form of wind events and tornadoes. At least 13 people have died in multiple states due to severe weather across the country as a powerful storm system that brought golf ball-sized hail and tornadoes to the south continues to march Saturday across the Northeast. So the storm system is the same that dumped feet of snow across parts of California, leaving some trapped in their homes with snow piled as high as second-story windows and prompting the government to declare a state of emergency in 13 counties. Many of those affected are now bracing for another round of snow and rain on Saturday from a new system. So really, the trend here is just back to back to back storms. Certainly for the West Coast. I mean, they cannot catch a break. Here we have 2 feet of rain in under 48 hours again, triggers floods in Johor, Malaysia. 4 dead, 40,000 flee homes. Okay, so really very similar story. Over 40 evacuation centers were set up in the districts of Johor Bahru, Kluang, Kota Tinggi, Kulai, Pontian, and Segamat late on February 28th. Malaysia's disaster management agency, it's so convenient and wonderful that all of these countries being hit by these events have a disaster management agency to take control. And I'm not against people getting aid, but when these events happen, the laws are such that the disaster management agency takes the power from the government. And in many cases, the Constitution, if there is one as such, is nullified because of this special situation, similar to how in the event of a pandemic, laws have been created to nullify normal legal proceedings, to nullify due process, to nullify things like needing to get approval for things from Congress and such, from other parts of the government and protocol. So here, 5,000 people from 1,542 households had moved to the evacuation centers as of March 1st. Okay, so really what we're looking at is a lowering of the standard of living, specifically in the West, but especially across the world, that will involve events that can be construed as natural, and with events with plausible deniability, insofar as the masses remain unaware of geoengineering and remain unaware of technology being used by governments and the military to control the weather. Once these disaster management agencies take control, once the infrastructure and the food system is degraded to a chaotic enough level, to a deteriorated enough level, people will be forced to turn to these agencies, will be forced to allow the government and its subsidiaries, and probably in many cases, some of these large corporations will step in a sort of public-private partnership situation in order to, quote unquote, provide aid. But the aid is going to come with strings attached. You're going to have to go to this evacuation center, and there's going to be rules there. You're going to have to, leave your house. Another factor to keep in mind is that if land is affected by some disaster or toxic spill or something, the government can offer you a quote unquote fair price for that property by lowering it drastically, by factoring in the amount of money it would take to clean up a toxic spill, such as the one that occurred in East Palestine, Ohio. So, for example, here, in 1994, the Silver Creek Drain District filed a condemnation action under the Uniform Condemnation Procedures Act, which would allow the drain district to take the property if it paid Extrusion's division fair compensation for it. The trial court determined that the parcel was an environmentally contaminated site, would cost about $237,768 to clean up. Therefore, although the market value of the parcel was $278,000, its net fair market value was $41,000 if the court took the cost of cleaning up the contamination into account. So you can see how easy it is for the government to essentially frame these transactions as fair and offer people an amount of money that is factoring in contamination that may have been done on purpose. And so thereby making this land that much easier for them to acquire.
You're not going to want to miss this one. So I've been seeing a lot about smart cities, and I decided to do a little digging myself. According to the World Economics Forum's website, 36 cities over 22 countries are participating in these smart cities, but many more is to come. So what is a smart city? A smart city stands for Surveillance Monitoring Analysis Reporting Technology. Basically, a digital ID will be given to every resident that will track in real time all of their daily movements, their activities, their spending habits, even their carbon footprint. They will be given 15-minute travel times to complete their daily activities unless they have a permit. And if they exceed those 15 minutes, they can be denied access to their spending and their activities that they need to do for the day. So of course you're like, I'm not going to move to one of those cities, right? Well, here's the thing. Because of the laws governing the Agenda 2030 land development, the government can actually seize polluted lands and force the residents to move. So if the government deems the land and water around you polluted, they can force you to move from your homes to these cities. So all of these train derailments, food processing plant fires, and other ecological disasters that are happening, they're beginning to make a lot more sense now.
Let's do a February recap, guys. Train derailment, Ohio. Train derailment, Houston. Train derailment, South Carolina. Tanker spill, Arizona. Parasitic acid leak in New Hampshire. Black Hawk crash in Alabama. Train derailment, Michigan. Plastic fire, 5 acres, Kissimmee, Florida. Metal plant explosion in Ohio. Train derailment, Nebraska. Explosion in Florida. Chemical plant fire in Tennessee. I'm sure I'm missing more. I know there's been more, I'm sure, but that was just a quick grab of the things that I found. It's fine though, it's just business as usual, guys. This happens all the time. Can we please talk about all the weird shit that's going on surrounding the Ohio train derailment? Did you know that just 3 months before the train derailment, East Palestine was chosen to do a test program for health emergency response? Check this out.
East Palestine is known as the place to be. It's way ahead of the curve on a program to provide better treatment for anyone in the event of an emergency.
I wonder what examples of information they're going to give us.
My ID works by taking a camera phone and pointing it at a QR code. It provides valuable medical information such as allergies, breathing difficulties, or other conditions.
Breathing difficulties. Interesting. Not to mention they changed the amount of information you can look up about vinyl chloride right before this happened. Did you hear about the plane crash in Little Rock, Arkansas, carrying 5 people who were heading to Ohio? For what? Oh, it was a team of 5 toxicologists and environmentalists going to Ohio to do tests and see how bad this actually is. All 5 of them were killed. Oh, what about when Norfolk Southern went home to offer people free testing, right? They should. Except they didn't say that there's a hold harmless agreement at the bottom, so when you sign it, you're holding them harmless in the event that something arises with your health. But it's fine. Everything's fine. The water's fine. The air is fine. Your food is fine. You're fine, okay? So what? They're comparing it to a Chernobyl level event. It's not like anything really bad happened. Wait, didn't they lie about Chernobyl for a while? You know, kind of until it was too late to really do anything and the damage was already done and oops. Let's learn from history. This is going to be a lot worse than they're telling us it is.
There's so much to cover these days. I'm really not sure where to begin, and I'm surely not sure where to end, because every day there are more events, there are more articles, and then in the multiplicity of coverage from all different people on all different platforms, it's easy to get lost in the sort of maelstrom of information. But I refuse to get lost, and I will continue to bring you guys what I think is relevant and cover what I think needs to be covered, because the purpose of this channel is to light people's fire and to inspire them and to spur them to have conversations and start conversations and pay attention to things that maybe before just flew under the radar. So take it easy. Don't let it bring you down. You know, act casual. We live in a world run by psychopaths where things randomly explode and burst into flame. It is what it is. I'll see you guys next time. Till then, I love you all. Peace.